Hey there, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar. I am Allison Castell, and I work on the marketing team here at JumpCloud. And before I hand it over to our hosts for the day, I'm just going to run through some housekeeping items really quickly. Just making sure that everything is working as expected. If there's any reason that you can't see or hear me, let me know in the chat. We can do some troubleshooting, making sure everything's working all right. If you do have to drop, or if you'd like to send this session to any of your colleagues, we are recording today's webinar, and we'll send a copy to you in about 24 hours post-event. And the last thing is, if you have any questions during today's presentation, just throw those in the question panel. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So if you have any questions during, just throw them in and we'll address those at the end. So that was a really quick down and dirty of the housekeeping items. So I am joined by Antoine Jabara, who is our co-founder, and Rob McGrath, our product manager. So I'm going to hand it over to our experts.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So today we're going to cover password management and how it fits in within your IAM stack. So this is the agenda that we'll be going over. We'll talk about why password management is still very relevant in 2023, how password management actually fits within your identity and access management stack, because that has changed in the last couple of years. We'll then introduce you to the JumpCloud Password Manager, give you an overview, show you a little bit of the admin workflows, user workflows, etc. And then we'll leave the floor open for Q&A towards the end. So with that, I'm jumping in. So why is password management important in 2023? As you all know, the cost of a data breach continues to rise, and the number of data breaches is continuing to rise, and there's no indicator that any of these two things are going to decrease in the future. What not a lot of people know but suspect is that over 80% of data breaches are caused by weak or reused passwords. So even though we now have more modern ways of authenticating users to different services, passwords remain one of the weakest links in your security and within your security stack. And in a lot of cases, that happens when SSO is not available. So you have single sign-on set up for different apps, but some apps still paywall SSO or don't offer it at all. That number is decreasing, but it's still there. So you have to rely on password-based methods to authenticate. And regardless of what you do, regardless of whether you have the best single sign-on stack, whether you're restricting the apps that your team uses for single sign-on, through single sign-on, etc., you'll still have people do shadow IT things where they actually sign up themselves to different types of services to use at work. And that creates a lot of problems because a weak password there, and password is the main way to authenticate to these unsanctioned types of applications, will lead to security concerns down the road. So password management is still relevant because it helps you address directly the problem with passwords, and it helps you address other types of challenges that you have, like getting good visibility and control over who has access to what within your organization. Now, I said in the beginning that password management's relationship to the rest of your IAM stack has changed in the last 5 years, and that is because a lot of services now offer single sign-on capabilities. You have now passwordless ways of authenticating into different things. We're seeing more and more companies use LDAP and radius-based authentication methods to log people into different types of things like Wi-Fi, VPN, on-prem infrastructure if it still exists. So Password Manager today complements that stack. 5 years ago, I would have told you that you'd have password management at the center of your stack, and that would cover around 70 to 80% of the apps that you're using for most companies, right? Some will vary, but and then you'll complement it with the rest. Now it's flipped, where we highly recommend that you use single sign-on capabilities with push MFA, conditional access policies for the zero trust, cloud LDAP, cloud radius, to abstract the layer of authentication from users as much as possible when possible, and complement that gap with password management. So that's how password management fits in the stack. Now at JumpCloud, one of the biggest requests that we've had over the past years is a request for us to add a password manager into our offering. For that specific reason, the feedback was we are using JumpCloud fully, for all of the different authentication methods described in the previous slide, but we still have to rely on passwords. And we're either not doing anything about it or are using a third-party point solution to do the password management, but we don't think that that makes sense anymore, because why would we have a cloud of point solutions when we can consolidate our identity access and also device management capabilities within one unified platform? So that's exactly what we launched in October of last year. And we now have our password manager that's fully deployed within the product. It allows you to securely store and autofill passwords across web pages, mobile applications, and desktop applications. So your users are never typing passwords again. They're never managing them themselves on Google Sheets, in Excel, on Post-it notes, on their own Notes app. So you're avoiding that problem. The password manager also enables you to seamlessly share passwords between different users and teams within the organization. Your teams are already doing it. It's unavoidable. Someone at some point will need access to something. What we're saying is that it should be done securely. It shouldn't be done via email. It shouldn't be done via shared documents. It shouldn't be done with Post-it notes that are posted on people's screens. It should be done in an end-to-end secure manner, and that's what the password manager does. As an admin, it also gives you centralized visibility and control from within the JumpCloud admin console, where you can already manage single sign-on, MFA, conditional access policies, your devices, all of that, these very important parts of your stack. So you get full visibility over who has access to what, and full control over the ability to restrict access for people to different types of access to passwords. And that ties back, the last point ties back to the rest, which is it's deeply integrated within the JumpCloud Open Directory platform. And this is a very important point, because the way we're seeing things and the way the world evolves is less point solutions, more platform solutions that can go as deep as they need to by giving you a unified approach to doing things that you care about. In that case, identity and access management. So the JumpCloud Password Manager is natively integrated within the directory. That means you have one user identity that's being entitled to single sign-on apps, MFA, devices, passwords in that case, and anything else that you're leveraging out of the JumpCloud platform. And that's a huge advantage because it helps you reduce your operating costs and vendor costs, directly reduce these costs. It helps you increase end user satisfaction in general, because they don't have to worry about using that platform to do this thing for MFA, that thing. They're just doing one thing. And it improves security because your setup is so much simpler than having a bunch of tools connect to each other and visibility gaps and a lot of manual procedures to kind of keep things nice and tidy. Now let's talk about the different types of password managers, because our approach to password management is different than the approach of others, and we believe that our approach has clear advantages to you as a business. So you have three types of password managers. Offline password managers, you might know KeePass, that falls in that bucket. These password managers store the information locally on a user's endpoint, but they don't enable syncing of these passwords across different devices, so you can only use the password manager on one device out of the box. They don't enable centralized admin visibility and control, so they're not fit for enterprise use cases, but they are secure in a sense that the passwords are only stored locally and encrypted locally, and that's it. So high on security, very low on convenience, not fit for most enterprise use cases. We'll put them on the side. Then the medium tier is cloud-based password managers, and cloud-based password managers are the type of password managers that we're most accustomed to. So you get that vault as well. It's encrypted with a key called a master password that the user is in charge of creating, managing, and remembering. But instead of that vault being stored locally on the device, it's actually stored on the password manager's servers. So all of the customers' passwords, vaults, are stored on the servers, and users access these passwords with a combination of their email and their master password. So this is high on convenience because you can access the information on any type of device, offers centralized admin visibility and control, but it degrades security because you're relying again on the user's ability to maintain a strong and unique password, not get phished, protect the vault at all costs, have them properly trained, etc. You also have the concern of an edge case of a password management vendor being compromised, which is what we saw recently in the news, and that can be worrying. The last one was extremely worrying in that case. Now, where we come in is a hybrid between the two. On the left is us, on the right is a cloud-based password manager. So the JumpCloud password manager, as I mentioned, is a hybrid between an offline password manager and a cloud-based password manager. It follows a decentralized storage architecture where passwords are stored locally on users' endpoints, and they're encrypted using keys that are generated on the device, so not user-generated. Now, the key difference between us and other types of password managers is that that vault that's stored locally will actually sync to other devices in an end-to-end encrypted way. And that enables users to access their passwords across multiple devices simultaneously. It also allows users to share passwords in a secure way with other users in their organization. And it gives centralized visibility and control for admins without giving them access to the users' passwords, unless they really choose to. In that case, there are ways for them to set the product up that way. So the advantage is the decentralized storage architecture, where JumpCloud servers are not storing everyone's encrypted vaults. The lack of reliance on end users to create, manage, and remember a master password. As a matter of fact, users can unlock their password manager by using biometrics like Touch ID or Windows Hello, or a local PIN that they create locally on the device that's not really used, that cannot really be used by hackers remotely to access a remote type of database. And it gives you the same level of convenience that you'd expect from a cloud-based password manager. And so why would you use the JumpCloud password manager? In our opinion, it's because of the decentralized storage architecture. So you get away from that worry of users managing keys and having the kind of like all of your eggs in one basket. It completes your IAM stack because because it's integrated within the JumpCloud console. You have single sign-on, you have multi-factor authentication, conditional access policies, radius authentication, LDAP authentication, and also password-based authentication in one platform. And finally, it provides a seamless experience for both admins and end users. So as an admin, you benefit from having all of this stuff in one admin console that you can just control very simply. And end users greatly benefit from this because they don't have to worry about using different means to access information in a frictionless way. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rob, who will walk us through a demo of the password manager.
Perfect. Thank you, Antoine. Hi, everybody. I'm Rob McGrath. I'm a product manager here at JumpCloud, and I've actually come from the help desk background. I was a help desk manager and been IT admin, worked for MSPs as well. And just got a spinning wheel. I guess it was giving me this real quick. I want to share my screen. And I'm happy to show you guys our password manager, both from the end user experience and also the admin experience. We're going to start off in a Windows virtual machine. So what I'm showing you is also available on a Mac and on a Linux device as well. But in this case, it's a Windows 11 device. And this will be showing our desktop app. There is a mobile app as well. So everything I'm showing you, you can do is autofill. You can access your passwords and items on the mobile app as well, both Android and iOS. So this desktop app is showing the database that is stored locally for this particular user. So this is a mixture of both shared passwords with enterprise users and also personal passwords that are unique to this user that nobody else would have access to. And yeah, it's all stored locally on this app. So I can see in here, I have a list of passwords. Over here is the actual information. You can store payment cards, secure notes, two-factor authentication codes as well. We do have a built-in 2FA authenticator, which is also very helpful for autofilling those 2FA tokens and also making them shareable, which for admins is incredibly painful. And I've seen admins come up with very creative ways of having a single phone with an authenticator app on there and handing it around the office to be able to log into that shared admin account. You don't have to do that anymore. You can share it in secure fashion directly to the other password manager apps. But in here, I can see all the passwords I would normally use. So this could have been added either by an administrator to a folder and shared with me, or could have been added by another user and shared with me, or I've added them on the fly and imported them from another password manager, or the wonderful sticky note that I used to have under my keyboard, which I have seen the most wild things possible on users. I'm sure you guys have horror stories as well. But yeah, that's some pretty crazy things out there. In this, we do have obviously the ability to share folders. You have a personal folder here, which is again only available to them, but you also have the ability to share folders across your enterprise. So in here, I could see that I have a couple items in here, like my bank account and my QuickBooks account. very clearly is very handy to hand this over to accounting without writing this down. So I can either share it directly with users and add them specifically here, or even more conveniently, add them to a specific group. So if I have accounting users, let's say I want to add the whole office to have in here. Oh, I just made up a group. Let's just say I have like marketing, and I want them to have access to my different accounts on here as well. They want to be able to submit their invoices or whatever to QuickBooks. Can quickly and easily add the marketing team to this. You'll notice a permission over here that I can change. I can update if they have access to it. There are 3 levels of this. Basically, be a folder owner where they would have the ability to be basically full admins of this, adding other users and adding items to the folders as well. You have a folder member that basically they'd have only the ability to autofill, so you can give passwords to people without them copying and pasting it and dropping it into like a text document or Excel sheet, defaulting back to the bad habits that they've probably gotten used to over the years. And also you have a manager, which is kind of the in-between, where they can add passwords and edit them and update them, can view them, but they won't be able to add it, some random person from the office to the folder that you didn't authorize them to do. So with that being said, obviously I have different folders in here with the various types of accounts in here. Content creation, I have social media. So if I want to add my, let's say I'm moving into the 21st century and I've no longer used MySpace, which apparently still exists, I discovered yesterday. If I want to add this TikTok account, for instance, because I'm way more cool now and hip, I can edit this and add this directly into my social media folder. And everybody who had access to it, even if it's had 2FA, they'd be able to have access to that exact item. Now, built into this, I do have the ability, since this is offline, I can add another app for here with a secure code, pair another device with that pairing code. Either can scan a QR code or enter a pairing code, and that would then add another device to my account, and then the data exists in 2 places. So I can use it, it'll sync between them, changes will be propagated across both devices without me having to manually sync it, write it down, or hope that it's in the cloud somewhere. I do have a built-in security dashboard as well, so I can see a snapshot of the password health that I have here. Yes, I know these are all weak, and then very surprisingly, I've reused the same password, which you've never seen anybody reuse the same password across other accounts in your enterprises, but it does happen, surprisingly. And but yeah, so this is what it looks like in the app. Now, this is cool. This is pretty standard for most password managers, but with JumpCloud, what's nice is this does live directly side by side, and admins can set this up to live side by side with their other capabilities like single sign-on. Single sign-on is obviously, from a cloud directory perspective, like our bread and butter, but that doesn't always meet all the solutions out there. So we do have the browser extension that you can use, and you can have your items in here. It will detect fields when you drop in a username and password. In fact, I have a situation here where it's detected that I've logged into this account recently, asked if I want to save it, which sure, why not, I will. And with that, now that's in my vault, but on top of this, this all looks like a standard single sign-on page. Like you see all these options here. These are actually, this is not actually a single sign-on page. This is in fact a URL, which is incredibly helpful, particularly for new hires. I've been in that position where I've had to onboard a new user, and the dilemma is you've created all their accounts before they've even logged in. They have their brand new fresh laptop, and now the daunting task of logging in across all 15 accounts that you just assigned to them is now on their plate, and they have to figure out what they have access to. Almost have a dilemma of like, where in the world do I log in to get my job done? This can definitely help, because you can set up URLs to be tiles on this page. So all they have to do is log into their JumpCloud console, regardless of the browser. They can use whatever browser they're on, whatever device, if they prefer Firefox, Chrome, whatever. They can log in and go to the JumpCloud console and have those bookmarks available to them. So I can come in here and you'll see it'll offer Monday.com. I have a field, and it will start doing the autofill behavior if this is a non-single sign-on account. Now, this case, it is a single sign-on. You'll have this is a normal username and password, but a lot of times people have this, and as you saw, I dropped in the 2FA token. I'm logging in now. Now, something like this, like for instance in Squarespace, if I wanted to be even more streamlined, I even have it set up to automatically drop in the username, password, and it just logged in. I don't have single sign-on enabled for this, but it just acted like that just with one click. I just clicked on that icon and it went in. That's extremely handy, seamless experience, and this would obviously live side by side with any other tools that you have set up here for single sign-on that actually is truly single sign-on. this is a great way to have those apps sitting side by side, and they don't have to rely on bookmarks here and using the password manager extension here. It's all in one convenience console page for them. Now, that's what it would look like for an end user, but when it comes to the administrators, there is handy stuff in the admin console there as well. So here's the home page for an admin would see in here. And obviously we have our normal authentication methods of LDAP for your on-prem services like storage or printing or anything else like that. You have Radius for either Wi-Fi connectivity or VPN authentication. Your single sign-on, I'll quickly highlight that because those apps I showed right there, for instance, Squarespace, I came in here, I gave it a logo, I added the bookmark in here. So this is the URL that's showing up that. And anybody I sign this to will have that tile and they can log into that. And if the password's been shared with them, they'll be able to use that login completely seamlessly. But for the password manager part, I have this dashboard that shows me a synopsis of how my organization looks right now. I can see the types of apps that are connected in there, if there's some that are wildly out of date, or if I have some that for instance, like I have passwords in my enterprise that are very weak. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I see, okay, Rob McGrath, or in this case, John Doe, has a medium password health. Now I'm going to venture to say it actually is probably weak because I have one really good password and very bad other passwords, so it kind of averages out. But here I can see a list of these passwords. And this also, not only does it show the items that are on here, but it also gives some layer of ambiguity where I don't necessarily see the password. A lot of times admins, you want to be able to see if what accounts like a user would have if that's in their app. So like these are not shared passwords. I can see that this person has these items shared or saved in their app, but not necessarily shared with other people. But I also don't want to see their passwords as an admin because that gives a layer of privacy to the user that we want to be able to, as an administrator, help them be more secure while also maintaining some level of privacy for their work. So in here, I can see that they have these items saved with that. And I can see also that they have several reused passwords. So I might have to have a candid conversation with John Doe, like, hey, you have a lot of weak passwords and you're reusing them. You're going to cause a data breach and this is going to be a disaster. So with that, I mean, this is also, I can see the items, I can see what kind of devices they have on there, and I can even have, which is a very handy feature, the ability to have logs for their password manager, which is basically directly baked into our directory insights logs, which is very handy for when it comes to using your password manager. It's difficult to have to live in two different types of logs and two different types of portals to handle things like compliance, like when you're dealing with reports for compliance, or you're trying to track down an incident, or you want to, when it comes to onboarding or offboarding employees, you want to make sure you can always kind of keep track of what happened, where they're at, the status of their account, what the blast radius might be if you might have been a compromise, or somebody went rogue or something like that. This is a very, very nice way as an admin to get great insight into what's going on with your users at all times and be able to revoke access. And again, all this is very handy, but if you were to offboard a user and deactivate them, their passwords get nuked in their apps. They no longer have access. So their single sign-ons locked down, their passwords are nuked, and you've effectively protected your enterprise from being compromised by an ex-employee, which if you watch the news and tech, very often is there an employee that was let go and their access was never revoked, and that's a nightmare unfolding many times in very, very critical type situations. So yeah, and again, as an administrator, I can have access into this. I can get insights into the folders here. So for instance, the social media folder, I can get access, view like who has access to it, what kind of passwords are stored into here. I can see what groups have access, can see individual users, and I can then even manipulate access here. So if I want to change this or revoke, I don't want marketing to have, or for instance, like I don't want accounting to have access to this anymore, I can revoke access and the passwords are then removed from their apps, and it's unbeknownst to them. They don't have to go through, I don't have to trust that they're deleting these, it's gone. And yeah, this is a very handy and seamless way to live both side by side with single sign-on and also augment it where the situation is single sign-on is just simply not there. Either it's cost prohibitive or just it's a bespoke solution that you have in place, or in the enterprise world, line of business apps have been developed and they just simply are working. They might be 15, 20 years old before single sign-on was really even a thing to be considered. This is a very, very nice way to be able to use the best of both worlds with password management and also the advanced user authentication methods of JumpCloud's cloud directory. So yep, that's both the admin and the end user experience with our password manager.
Thank you, Rob. Perfect. So if you're wondering how to get started, the password manager is now part of the JumpCloud admin console. So you'll see one of the navigation items on the left that will say password management under the user authentication category. You can activate it from there. It is a paid add-on, and it is a paid add-on to the platform, and will cost you around $3 per user per month to use. If you have any types of questions, whether they are sales related questions, usability questions, if you want to better understand how this can be deployed within your environment, how it will work on different setups with multiple users and a special use case that you have, don't hesitate to reach out to your account manager. If you're not sure who your account manager is, just email us, and we'll route you to the right person. So Allison's gonna put our emails in the chat so you can have access to that easily. Now, with that, we're gonna run a quick. So we're gonna ask you whether you're interested about learning more about the password manager, and it's gonna show up on your screen as a prompt. Just select the option that makes sense. If you select yes or yes, but not until next month, we'll make sure to have someone reach out to you and make themselves available in case you have any additional types of questions that you wanna figure out. So the prompt should be on your screen now. Let's give it a couple of seconds. Okay. Shall we? Yeah. Thank you. Perfect. With that behind us, let's move on to the Q&A part. So, Allison, yeah, hi, Allison.
I'm back. We have a good handful of questions, so I'm just going to start running through them. It looks like the first one we have is, can you sync or transfer information from one password manager to the JumpCloud password manager?
Yes, this is one thing that we didn't demo today, but we do have a very advanced import wizard that will guide you through the steps to get your passwords from wherever they exist today to the password manager. The import wizard supports all major password managers, but even if you don't see your password manager or your storage method on the list, we do have a generic importer that works over 90% of the time out of the box. And it's fairly advanced in the sense that it will guide you through the steps, but it will not only get the passwords in. If you have shared folders and these other types of password managers that are exported from that password manager, it will actually read these shared folders and recreate them within the JumpCloud platform.
Perfect. Another question here is, can shared passwords and items live in multiple folders?
Yes, no, actually they can't. At the moment, you can only add a password to one folder. What we've seen some of our customers do is recreate the folders when needed, or create generic folders that encompass, like if you have a setup, and that doesn't work for everyone, but if you have two teams and these two teams need access to the same set of passwords, you'd create a shared folder for that specific team. Otherwise, you'd only share that password with one user, or you would create duplicates of these passwords. But if you're a user and you're sharing that password with another user, then that other user will only see it once on their end. It's the sharer who wants to give access to multiple people in a very, like in that specific setup, that will see a duplicate of that account.
Okay, perfect. Another question here is, can you automate user enrollment to the password manager through the JumpCloud groups?
Yes, for sure. So the way you enroll users in the password manager is through JumpCloud groups, and there's a lot of value to this. The first one is that it automates things. So if you have when you add a user to a group or remove them from a group, they get enrolled or unenrolled from the password manager. But that goes a step further as well. And Rob mentioned in his demo that shared folders can be shared with groups of users. These are the same groups of users. So if you add someone to the marketing team at a point in time, then that person will not only get access to the password manager, but will also get access to the shared folder that contain marketing passwords that has been shared with the marketing group.
Perfect. Another question here is, can a user hide the personal account activity?
So there, whenever users, whatever passwords users have in their personal vaults are not actually shared with admins. And at this moment in time, there's no activity log for these accounts that are being shared, but that might change in the future. In general, and as a rule of thumb, we recommend that users don't use this password manager for their own personal things. Now, it's unavoidable. Some users will do it, but just having clear guidelines on not to store information because this vault will be managed by the company. Having that communication out is important. And it's important not just from a privacy perspective, but from a password access perspective, because if that person were to leave the company and you were to deactivate their account in JumpCloud, then their password manager, as Rob mentioned in the demo, would get wiped. So they'd lose access to these vaults. Now, will we in the future introduce a personal vault that you can use as a consumer? Like, everything's possible at this point in time, but we don't have that in our roadmap at the moment.
Okay, thank you for that. Here's kind of a question, follow-up question to that is, for an ex-employee, say that gets terminated, if someone were to still need those passwords in case their manager needs to access any accounts, can that be done, or what is the recommended kind of workflow for that?
So the recommended workflow today is to share passwords with managers whenever more than one person needs to access to a vault. Another thing you can do is the password manager stores encrypted backups locally on users' devices, and you can control where these backups are stored. Now, if you set this backup locate path to be a location that's being backed up somewhere else, like to Google Drive or OneNote or Dropbox or any sort of storage that you have, then if someone leaves the company, what you could do is retrieve that encrypted backup, reset their password, impersonate the user, and restore access to the vault. It's complex, requires multiple steps, but it's done by default to not make it easy for people, because a lot of companies don't want to be able to access passwords that are in the personal folders of users, even though they're enterprise folders, because most of the time you can reset the passwords. But there are cases where you can't and you need a recovery, and that's a path to do that.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Another question we have is, can you automate the deployment of the password and app to Mac and Windows devices?
Yes, so if you're using JumpCloud's device management capabilities, then you're likely familiar with our commands section. In the commands section, in the command library, we do have commands to deploy the agent and install the agent for the password manager on users' devices. And that can be pretty seamless. So you just deploy it, shows up on the user's end, they just type their email address, get a verification code, they type their JumpCloud email address, they get a verification code, and they're in. Password manager activated. There's no need to create a master password. There's no need to go install things anywhere. It's just a unified experience. And we'll keep improving it over time, obviously, to make it even more seamless. But it's the way it stands today, it's quite easy for a user to go from no password manager to JumpCloud password manager.
Perfect. Another question we have is, do you allow passwords to be shared to outside people who are not a part of your company?
So we do not currently support this feature. What you could do with JumpCloud is potentially invite users for a certain period of time to the JumpCloud console and set an expiration date for when they're not users anymore, and then just deploy the password manager to these users. It's not the desired flow for most cases where you need to share a password, but we've seen some companies do it.
Okay, looks like we have some pricing and packaging questions. We'll probably skip those and just send those over to our team and have someone reach out to you directly. So let's see. Another one we have here is, can I mandate password sharing with a manager when it is created?
So you cannot mandate password sharing with a manager because we cannot always guarantee that you're going to add a specific type of password. So that would require really deep knowledge into what users will store in the password manager, and your ability to say, for example, anything on QuickBooks will automatically get added to a specific folder. With that said, it's on our roadmap. We're looking at ways to make it happen from a user experience perspective. But out of the box, it would require a tremendous amount of knowledge of what type of things, because you can't just have it most of the time you can't just have it catch all and say any type of account stored in the password manager should go to a manager, because that very frequently will kind of deter users from using the password manager for anything that they don't want their manager to have access to. So sometimes you still need things for work, like your work email, for example, and your Slack username and password if you're not using single sign-on there, and you don't want your manager to have access to that information. So we're looking at ways to make that possible, but we're not currently working on any implementation that requires.
That makes sense. I have a question here. How can a user recover their account in case they forget their access PIN?
That's a very good question. So today we have multiple ways that enable users to recover their access. The first one is if they have the password manager installed on more than one device, first of all, they can reset any other device. They can also delete the application, reinstall it on the device, and it will re-prompt them to authenticate through the email. It will also detect on the device itself that you have an encrypted backup and recover that encrypted backup to give you access to it. Now, if you're a user and you lost access to your device, for example, then you can follow the same flow where you restore from another device. That's an option if you have it. You could also restore from an encrypted backup if you set these backups to be stored somewhere backed up. And we're launching in about a month a cloud fail-safe feature that works as follows. So an admin will get a key that's generated in the admin console that will ask them to store on their own device. That's a key, and they're only going to use this key in extreme circumstances. If a user is in the situation where all their devices are stolen, they lose access to all the backups are not stored anywhere else, there's no other way to recover, then an admin will be able to take that key and use that key to decrypt a heavily encrypted version of the user's vault that's going to be stored on JumpCloud server and restore it to their new account that they're signing up to. This feature will be optional, but we're getting a lot of requests for it. So we have high confidence that it's going to tick the box for any one of you who's worried about the architecture. But I can safely say that having deployed the password manager deployed for a series of months now, I don't think that we've seen any case where there's been any true data loss because of these cases. And before that, the password manager was acquired into JumpCloud through an acquisition. And the product that had it deployed to hundreds of thousands of users for several years. And the instances where users had full data loss were very, very, very rare and involved layers of things going bad. So like, it wasn't just about the passwords by the time the password vault was lost.
Perfect. Appreciate that insight. Another question here for the mobile to workstation sync. Does the mobile device need to be on the same network?
No, so you pair your mobile device with the desktop by copying a pairing code that shows up on the desktop or by scanning a QR code. And once you do that, they're connected. Now the connection is end-to-end encrypted and it's done through JumpCloud servers. It's relayed through JumpCloud servers. So device A encrypts the message with the key of device B that only device B has, and then sends that message through JumpCloud servers in near real time to that other device. Other device receives the message, verifies the signature to ensure that it's coming from a device they trust, and then proceeds to decrypt the message using the key that only they have. And that's how it works on both ends.
Perfect. We're getting to the last couple of questions here. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to get them in. And if for some reason we don't get to those, we'll definitely be following up with you after. So one of the last questions we have are, if I have a folder with passwords already in it, when I then go to share it to a user or group, are all the passwords in that folder added automatically?
Yes, so you're actually sharing the folder itself with anything that's in it, right? So what you'd want to do is, if you want to share a subset of that folder, is get some of these passwords out of the folder. And we've seen users use naming conventions, like, for example, finance, personal finance sharing, or finance team, or that's an example. Same would apply for marketing or technical accounts. You could also keep these passwords in your personal vault. Our search for functionality is really, it's a real-time search because it's searching a local data set. So there's no loading, etc. You can access any password quickly without the need to have that visual representation of folders most of the time. But some of you will, because it's just, we all have our habits. And in that case, that naming convention works pretty well.
Okay, and then another one here is, does the password manager require the JumpCloud agent or only the app/browser extension?
It doesn't require the JumpCloud agent, so you can use the password manager on its own, or you can use it in conjunction with the JumpCloud agent. The advantage of having the JumpCloud agent, aside from the obvious benefits from a device management perspective, is the ability to deploy the password manager itself onto the device. But it works standalone, so if you just want to use the password management capabilities of JumpCloud, you can.
Perfect. I think that is all the questions that we've got. If we miss anything, like I said, we will be sending out an email with the recording. Feel free to just reply to that. If you have any additional questions, we'll have someone reach out. I think that's everything. I really wanted to thank everyone for taking some time out of their day to join our webinar. Thank you to Antoine and Rob for being our awesome hosts for today. There will be a survey that's going to pop up right after this webinar. If you could just take a couple minutes, tell us how you thought this webinar went so that we can continue to make great content for everybody on here. So once again, thanks everyone and have a wonderful day.
Please subscribe and check out more content from us.